Hello and welcome back to my channel. So this week's video is talking about this book that I read called Tiny Habits, and I mentioned it in at least 2 other videos previously that I should probably just make a video about this to kind of tell you about it and chat about it because it's something that I referenced. So here is the video. So a little bit of background. Tiny Habits has to do with, as you might guess, making new habits. And this is one in sort of a collection of books that I've read that have to do with setting new habits. So breaking old habits that you don't want to continue and starting new ones that you do. So I haven't actually talked about all of the books that I've read. I did at one point do a review of the Clear Habit Journal just because I got my hands on it. And I did ultimately read the book Atomic Habits. I don't know if I actually had read the book by the time I did the review. I don't think I had, but I did eventually read it. So before we dive in, I want to give a little bit of a rundown on some of the books I've read about habits. So this is not necessarily a full list of all the books that I've read about habit tracking, habit hacking, all of that kind of stuff, but these are ones that have kind of stuck in my brain after the fact, and so I figure I will just go ahead and give you those titles. So if you're interested in reading more, you can. So there's The Power of Habit, there's Atomic Habits, Essentialism, which is a little bit of a different approach, and I really like that one. And then also Tiny Habits is the most recent one that I read, and it's actually kind of probably my favorite one. I would say that Essentialism and Tiny Habits are probably my 2 favorites out of all 4 of those books, but I did enjoy all 4 of them. So focusing kind of on Tiny Habits, the reason I wanted to make a video is not really to do a review of the book, but it's because I actually went through and I did one of the activities in the book. So there's a bunch of different activities that you can do, and I actually did get the book on Audible. This is not sponsored in any way. I'm just talking about the book because I like it, and I pay for Audible myself, but just FYI, if you're interested. I actually got it on Audible, and because I could download the PDF version. I think if you get the ebook, the PDF might be with it, but I actually have not read the ebook, so I cannot attest to that. You would have to check that out. But there's like an 80-page sort of companion PDF that came with the audiobook that I got, and it's got a ton of the information. So a lot of times in the audiobook, he'll like refer to different things and say like, oh, it's on like this part or da-da-da-da, and you just go to that PDF and it goes through it. So one of the activities that I specifically did is I wanted to work on some new habits kind of in like a exercise kind of vein. But what I really like about Tiny Habits is that you start in like the absolute simplest thing. And that I think is one of the things that's a little bit different than some of the other books that I read. Is a lot of times they're like, oh, you have to like start simple, start small, but like this really takes you down to like, what is the absolute first step I need to do? And so, for example, they'll say, you know, instead of setting yourself up, I'm going to exercise 1 time a week, which seems like a small step. It's, I'm going to like, at night, I'm going to put my exercise clothes out, or when I wake up, I'm going to put on my shoes, and like that is the habit that you do. So definitely like this is going to be very distilled. If you're at all interested in this particular book, I definitely recommend reading it, but this is going to be very distilled. So one of the things that I really like is it's very much like the absolute smallest kind of habit. So I figured, okay, I don't really like to exercise. I like to walk. I love to walk. Like that's totally fine. But I've never been successful at getting an exercise habit sort of in place because it's just not something that I like. So why don't I try taking some of these things that I learned in Tiny Habits and try and figure out some very small habits that I can do that I can just sort of incorporate every day and like see how that goes. So the thing I actually ended up doing was a brainstorming session where you brainstorm a bunch of different habits that you then take and you put along sort of a line. It's like, okay, how easy is this for me to do? How hard is this for me to do? How like much do I think I would actually want to do this, and how much do I think I would not want to do this? And then you ultimately pick 2 or 3 sort of golden habits that fall in this section where it's easy and I'm like predisposed to want to actually do this thing. So I figured, okay, why don't I give that a try and like see if this is something that I can actually work into my routine and all of that. So what I thought I would do is take you over. I actually kept the little index cards I did to do like my habit storm thingy on, and I also have the tracker that I ended up using. So let's move on over to the table and I'll show you how that has been going for me because I've been doing it now for about 2.5 months. So let's head on over. So I wanted to go ahead and show you how I actually did this swarm of behaviors. So I had to decide first on my aspiration or my outcome. So my ultimate goal is to move more, and I specifically wanted to do a little bit more movement, a little bit of toning, and a little bit of stretching, because those are the things, like specifically walking is kind of fine, but the toning and stretching are the things that I struggle with the most. That's the main reason I do try and work on exercise classes, is that I just want to be a little bit more flexible because my body just feels better. So that was sort of the main thing that I was going with. So as you can see here, that's my like little title card. And then I went ahead and I filled out a bunch of different things. So I have the splits challenge book, stretching before bed, 5 or 10 minute video, walking in town, walking along the K, accountability buddy, research ab exercises, research flexibility exercises, and 2 squats. So those were my initial thoughts. And then what I did is I actually went through and I labeled all of them. So you can see I have little letters at the bottom here. So that is an M, oops, pull this one back, an M for move, a T for tone, and an S for stretch. So after I did this, I went ahead and I laid them out to try and figure out, what was the thing that was going to be the easiest. So it was what is going to be sort of the easiest for me to do and what is going to be more likely for me to do it. So for example, the easier things ended up being sort of over on the right. So these ones ended up being more over on the right. Accountability buddy was definitely like a possibility. Walking in town or along the K were, also things that I could do. 5 or 10 minute video went kind of off screen. Stretching for bed was kind of over here. And then the splits book challenge, was kind of over here. So I sort of went through everything and I was like, okay, what is going to be the easiest thing for me to do? So what I ended up doing is I picked these 3. Oops, and I know this because I then ultimately wrote on the back. So I said, okay, I'm gonna hold on to these in case I want to add other behaviors later, but for right now, I'm not gonna focus on these. I'm just gonna focus on these 3 here. So these were the ones I ultimately went with. And what I ended up doing then is I said, okay, researching ab exercises, researching flexibility exercises, and 2 squats. First of all, I need to figure out what I actually wanted to do. So I actually did a quick Google search and I was like, okay, top 5 ab exercises or like easy flexibility exercises. And I went through the list that came up and I was like, okay, I found one that I actually really like. So for ab exercises, I went with bicycle crunches specifically because they are standing and I have this weird thing where I hate having to like pull out a mat and get on the floor. But if I can do it standing, I'm much more likely to do it. And then the flexibility exercises was like the standing calf stretch. And then 2 squats is obviously just 2 squats. So the next step that I had to do was, okay, if these are the things that I want to do, when am I actually going to do them? So that we need to flip over on the back. So I picked my 3 and I thought about, okay, where could I fit these into my schedule? So in Tiny Habits, they give you the specific format. So it's after I will. So I said, for example, the easiest one was after I start the coffee machine, I will do 2 squats because that's something I make coffee at home. So when I do that, I will just, press the button on the machine, do my 2 squats. Cool. Then I said, okay, in the morning, I wanted to have ones that were kind of spread out during the day. So I have my morning one, which is after I wake up and go to the bathroom, I will do 5 seconds of standing calf stretch, left and right. So 5 seconds on each leg. Okay, so that's my in the morning. And then after that, I have my coffee one. And then at night, I went with, I wrote down find 2 stretches and I ultimately only did 1 of each because I was like, simplify, just like simplify. So after I put on my PJs, I will do 4 standing bike crunches. So 2 left and 2 right. So that it's very, very simple. I have a specific time for when I'm going to do it. And it's something that takes 5 seconds. You know what I mean? Maybe 10 seconds in the case of the standing stretch, but they're all very short things to do. So what I decided with these is I didn't want to put them on my tracker because most of these things are things that I do in my bedroom. Well, the first and the last one are things I do in my bedroom. This one I do obviously at the coffee machine. So I was like, I want to have some sort of a tracker that's going to be easily accessible, that is definitely not an out of sight, out of mind thing, because that is a big thing for me. And so I just made up a quick thing with the table. So this is actually the first month that I did. So you'll see here, I just have it labeled Tiny Habits month and year. And then I just write that in so that I can use this every single month. I don't have to even change anything. I just print a new one and I print it double-sided. So I have the first one, I have my specific like rule, and then I've bolded what I actually do. So after I wake up and go to the bathroom, I will do 5 seconds of standing calf stretch, left and right. And then I just have the days, and I have down to 31. So obviously in September, I just crossed out the 31st day because there aren't 31 days. So you can see here that basically most of the time I do just the 5 minutes in the morning. I do just that, but I do it every single morning. I basically do enough crunches or enough squats based on how many cups of coffee I drink. So I think I was sick here, so I didn't really have any coffee. But most days I average about 3. And then on the evening one, there are a couple days where I actually did some extra bicycle crunches, but most days I just do the 1. So I actually started doing this at the end of August. So somewhere I have my August one. Oh, this is August. Oh, literally it's over here because it's currently October. That's why. So you can see here, I just put little dashes because I started on the 6th and actually just wrote start. So you'll see here, I actually have all of my August that I was doing. And the first month I actually started scaling up a little bit more. So scaling up meaning I did longer or added more repetitions. But then once the school year started, I actually just more or less do like the base. So this has actually been working pretty well. They're all exercises that are easy for me to do, that are exercises I like doing, that I like, you know, because I want to stretch. They're stretching exercises that I actually like and they're comfortable and whatever. The thing that I actually do still kind of struggle with, and the reason I do have the tracker still, is that it's not quite automatic yet. And I think that this is the one sort of part of the equation is the celebration, which we'll talk about a little bit in the outro, but I do still have to kind of work on that. But I will say that as a start, I actually really like this. I definitely could ultimately scale up a little bit, but I think that this is probably the first thing that I have tried that is specifically exercise related. No, it's not like a 10-minute video or whatever, but it is specifically exercise related that I have kept up with for more than like a month and a half, because I did almost all of August, I did all of September, and I'm on to October now. So by the end of this month, I will be at almost 3 months doing this. And it's actually something that's just like easy enough to do that even when I'm tired, I still do it. So again, this is just one aspect of the tiny habits, but I wanted to share that because I mentioned this a couple of times in some videos. So this is what I ultimately ended up doing kind of at the end of this summer. And this is how I have been more or less successfully working in a little bit of exercise into my routine. And again, we'll see if I sort of scale up or if I branch out into other activities later. But for right now, I'm just keeping it very simple because I know that I have a tendency to fall off the wagon when things come to the exercise side of things, aside from just walking around town, because that I do anyway. So let's head back on over for a quick little wrap up. So there you have my little foray into tiny habits. Again, there is a ton more information in this book that I have not even touched on. I honestly specifically focused on this one aspect because I knew that, you know, for example, thinking about things like my morning routine, I actually have a morning routine that I'm pretty happy with. The thing that I struggled the most was the exercise thing. And so I figured, okay, I'm going to just like really boil down what I need. There's so much more information in this book, but here's the information that's going to be directly applicable to me for this specific thing that I want to work on. And as you see from the habits that I ultimately chose, they were all very, very simple. I will say that the thing that I struggle with the most is the final step of setting a new habit is actually the celebration. And I'm actually really bad about doing that, which is probably the reason why I still have to do the tracker, because I do sometimes forget. So that's something that I need to work on. But I will say that just doing these things, even though most of the time I don't scale up at all, honestly, like most days I just do the minimum, I do feel a little bit better just because I have been working a little bit more like flexibility. Like I've noticed that I don't have quite the same amount of back problems at the end of the day that I used to have. It's this like low level honestly has been just kind of enough to help me sort of keep centered, I guess. So, you know, at some point I might try to scale up even more or add different things, but for right now, I'm just sticking with these 3 habits. And I don't know how long I'll actually end up tracking them. It's something that's easy for me to do for right now. So I'm just kind of doing it because I do notice that I feel a bit better. So we're gonna kind of keep up with that. But yeah, so as I mentioned, I am just doing sort of the bare bones. This is not a review of the book. This is just a look at one of the exercises. I mentioned this in a couple of videos, and so I wanted to make sure I chatted about it and I shared the book title with you in case this is something that you're interested in looking into more yourself. I definitely recommend reading it yourself because there's so much information that like I did not even go into. So if you have any comments or questions, let me know down below. I will also leave all the books that I mentioned linked down below as well in case you want to do some other habit hacking reading. And yeah, let me know if you end up reading this book and if you found it useful. So that is all I have for you today. I will see you in my next video. Bye. Hey guys, so if you've made it all the way to the end of this video and are actually watching my end screen and you're not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would. There's a little button right there for you to do it. And if you're interested in watching some more of my videos, I have links to 2 of my older videos off to the left there, so you can check those out if you would like to, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.